I wouldn't pay for my golden brother's wedding. So my parents tried to destroy me at a party. But it backfired in front of everyone. I refused to pay for my golden boy brother's wedding, and my parents tried to humiliate me at a party, but it completely blew up in their faces. I'm 28 years old, and I've got 3 siblings. Tyler, my younger brother, is 25 and just got engaged. There's also our older sister, she's 30, and our youngest brother who's 22. So 4 of us all together. My folks are the type who are big on family and always want to be involved in everything we're doing. So when they brought up Tyler's wedding, I wasn't surprised. But what caught me off guard was what they wanted from us. They sat all of us down recently and told us Tyler and his fiancée are planning a big wedding next year. Thing is, they can't afford it on their own. Instead of encouraging them to keep things simple and stay within budget, our parents pitched a different idea. All of us siblings should chip in to help cover the cost. They tried to sell it with lines like, "Family takes care of family," and "Tyler deserves the wedding of his dreams." But to me, it didn't sound like a request, it felt like an obligation. The way they said it made it crystal clear that they expected me to put up most of the money. They pointed out that I've got a stable job, no kids, and I'm doing alright financially, so I should be able to help more. They told my older sister and younger brother to give whatever they could. But I got the strong feeling that I was the one they were really counting on to foot the bill. I was stunned. It honestly felt like they were signing us up to pay for this wedding without even asking. I even questioned if I'd heard them right. I shot back, maybe a bit too bluntly, that if Tyler can't afford the wedding he wants, then he should scale it down and go with something he can actually pay for. Well, that didn't go over well. My parents were quick to jump on me, calling me selfish and unsupportive. My dad snapped, saying, "Your brother's always been there for you. It's your turn to return the favor." Then my mom chimed in, going on about how this is just what families do during big life moments. She said if the roles were reversed, and I was the one getting married, they'd do the same for me. But honestly, I don't believe that for a second. Our families always had a double standard. They didn't let up. "You make good money, you'll figure it out," they said. "It's just this one thing, for your brother." I tried to explain that I'm handling all my own finances on my own. I'm still making monthly payments on student loans, got a little credit card debt, and I cover all my bills, rent, power, everything. I'm not exactly rolling in money here. Sure, I have a decent job, but that doesn't mean I've got a pile of cash lying around waiting to be spent. But my parents brushed it off. They just kept insisting that since I'm in a better place financially than my siblings, I should step up and make a sacrifice. Now, let me give you a little more background. Tyler's always been the golden child in our family. He's still living at home, rent-free, and my parents pick up the tab for a lot of his stuff. When he needed a car, they got him one that was practically brand new. I, on the other hand, had to take out a loan and buy a used one. After college, I was expected to be completely independent, while Tyler kept getting help. I didn't bring all that up during the argument, but trust me, it was all running through my head while they were pushing me. At one point, my older sister said she and her husband could maybe pitch in a little, something like $200. And our youngest brother, who's still in college and totally broke, just kept his head down and didn't say a word. It was clear either of them could really afford to contribute much, and the whole thing just seemed like a plan to get me to cover the bulk of the wedding. After all, I'm the only one with a steady job and no kids. So I told my parents, politely as I could, that I wouldn't be paying for Tyler's wedding. I told them I care about Tyler and I'm happy for him, but his wedding isn't my financial responsibility. If he wants something he can't afford, he needs to rethink what kind of wedding he's planning. And I made it clear I wasn't about to go into debt or wreck my own finances over this. They didn't take that well at all. My mom started crying, saying she was disappointed in me. My dad called me selfish and said I was failing as a brother. Then came the guilt trip. "After everything we've done for you." That one stung, especially since I've been financially on my own for years now. Eventually, we hit a deadlock. They told me to think it over and strongly implied I was letting the family down. I left their house angry and feeling guilty at the same time. But the truth is, this isn't some emergency, it's a luxury. I don't think it's right to plan a lavish wedding and then expect other people to cover the costs. I haven't heard anything directly from Tyler yet, but I'm pretty sure he knows I'm not on board, and I'd guess he's not too happy about it either. When I talked to my friends about it, they were shocked. Not a single one of them had ever heard of siblings being expected to help pay for a wedding. My best buddy actually burst out laughing. He thought I was joking. One friend even said it sounded so ridiculous he assumed I made the whole thing up. So now I'm wondering, was I really out of line for refusing to pitch in for my brother's dream wedding? Update 1. First off, thanks to everyone who weighed in on my original post. To sum it up, I'm the 28-year-old who said no to helping fund my 25-year-old brother's big wedding, even though my parents were pushing all of us to chip in. I said no because I've got student loans, debts, and responsibilities of my own. Naturally, that caused a whole bunch of tension with my parents. But the support I got from folks online really helped me feel confident that I made the right call. Most people agreed that I wasn't in the wrong. It's been almost a week since I posted, and a lot's happened since then. I found out something new that really sealed my decision. Tyler and his fiancée are planning to drop around $40,000 on this wedding. Yeah, you heard that right. 40 grand, for one single day. And get this, they're still living at home with my parents, barely paying anything. I found out about the $40,000 price tag when I stopped by my parents' house a few days after our fight. I was over at my parents' place a few days after that big argument when I overheard Tyler and his fiancée chatting excitedly with my mom about venues and vendors. That's when I caught his fiancée say something like, "It'll be around $40,000 total, but it has everything we want." I nearly fell out of my seat. A $40,000 wedding? That's unheard of in our family. Now, my parents aren't poor by any means, but they're far from wealthy. And as for Tyler? There's no way he's saved up that kind of money. The guy still lives at home rent-free and barely has anything put away. So I asked my mom quietly if the wedding was really going to cost 40 grand. She just sighed and said, "Weddings are expensive. That's what they've got their hearts set on." I asked how they were planning to actually pay for something that big. She told me she and Dad were going to help as much as they could, but they wouldn't be able to cover it all, so they were counting on us siblings to chip in. She also mentioned that Tyler's fiancée's family didn't have much money to offer either, so the burden was basically falling on our side to make this dream wedding happen. I told her, even if all of us pitched in, we weren't magicians. We couldn't just conjure up tens of thousands of dollars out of thin air. She didn't give any exact numbers. Just kept saying, "Every little bit helps." Which, honestly, felt like a setup. I had a strong feeling they had some specific amount in mind for me, and I wanted no part of that. What really got under my skin was how Tyler and his fiancée weren't even trying to save. They're living at home with no rent, no real expenses. By now, they should have had a decent chunk of money saved up. I asked Tyler kind of casually how the saving was going, and he just shrugged and said, "We're putting aside what we can, but everything's so expensive lately." That irritated the hell out of me. He's got the perfect setup to save, low expenses, full support from our folks, but instead, he went out and bought a shiny new truck and gave his fiancée a gorgeous engagement ring. Sure, that's their choice, but it's hard not to see that as careless spending when they're expecting the rest of us to help pay for their wedding. I called my older sister Claire to vent. She was just as surprised as I was when I mentioned the $40,000 number. She told me that when our parents first floated the idea of all the siblings helping out, she agreed to give a small amount, just a few $100. She and her husband have a tight budget, 2 young kids, and a mortgage, so that's all they could manage. She even apologized for agreeing to contribute anything, because now she feels like our parents are using her small offer to guilt-trip me into giving way more. Claire also pointed out that when she got married a few years back, she and her husband paid for nearly everything themselves. She never expected me, or our younger brother, to help with her wedding expenses. Later on, my youngest brother pulled me aside and told me he felt pressured and guilty during that first family meeting. He mumbled something back then about maybe helping out, but the truth is he can barely afford anything. He's in college and flat broke. He actually thanked me for standing my ground during that meeting, because he was too nervous to speak up and say no. So it's become pretty obvious what the plan is. Our parents want to pull a tiny bit from Claire, barely anything from our younger brother, and then lean hard on me for the majority of the money, plus their own contribution. Since I'm the only one with a steady job and no kids, they clearly see me as the main funding source. And I'll be honest, that realization made me angry. I felt totally taken for granted. I haven't had another big sit-down with them yet, but I did have a short follow-up conversation with my mom. She repeated the same line. "Every little bit helps." And I just told her, flat out, that my answer hadn't changed. I said I'm not going into debt or putting my financial future on the line for a single day, no matter how important it is to Tyler. She shot me a cold look and said she expected more from me. That one stung, but I didn't budge. So yeah, that's where things stand right now. If anything, all of this new info has just made me feel more confident that saying no was the right call. A $40,000 wedding while still living at home rent-free? That's nuts. If anything else happens, I'll share another update. Update 2. About a week later, I finally had the face-to-face with Tyler, and it got real ugly, real fast. He flat out called me greedy and said I was putting money ahead of family. It got so heated, he even told me that if I wasn't going to contribute, then I shouldn't bother coming to the wedding at all. That happened just a few days ago. I'd gone over to my parents' house for dinner, still trying to keep things somewhat civil. Tyler and his fiancée, her name's Lauren, were there too. Tyler was cold to me from the second I walked through the door. Dinner was stiff and awkward, and after we ate, my parents quietly slipped outside, probably trying to give us space or just get away from what they knew was coming. Lauren headed upstairs to take a phone call, which left just me and Tyler sitting in the living room. I figured I'd try to break the ice, so I asked something neutral about how the wedding plans were coming along. That was all he needed. He jumped on me right away. "Why do you even care?" he snapped. "You're not paying, so you don't get to ask about it." I stayed calm and told him that I do care. He's my brother, and I want him to have a great wedding. I just can't afford to pay for it. He cut me off and said, "It's not that you can't, it's that you won't." In his mind, I make good money and I'm just choosing not to help. He said I was being selfish and that I was letting the family down. That set me off. I told him he had no clue what my finances look like. Just because I make a decent living doesn't mean I've got $40,000 lying around. I have real responsibilities, bills, loans, all of it. He scoffed and said, "Everyone's got bills, you're not special." Basically accusing me of making excuses. I told him I wasn't making excuses, I was telling the truth. "This isn't about whether I want to, Tyler," I said. "It's about the fact that I literally can't give you what you're asking without burying myself in debt." He wasn't hearing it. He just kept going on about how families are supposed to support each other, and how I was falling short of that. Tyler hit me with this. "Even Claire and our little brother are pitching in, and they don't make anywhere near what you do. You're the only one refusing to help." I told him straight up that our sister and brother are offering what they can reasonably afford. It's not like they're handing over hundreds either. They're contributing tiny amounts without putting themselves in a financial bind. That's a whole different story from expecting me to shell out a few $1,000s like it's no big deal. But Tyler wasn't hearing it. He just kept going, saying I clearly didn't care about him. Then he said something that really hit me. "If you ever need help or ever get married yourself, don't expect me, or any of us, to be there for you." By now, he was almost shouting. Hearing him say he was ashamed of me, that one cut deep. Tyler and I had always been on good terms. We'd never had a fight like this before. Then he said something I couldn't believe. He told me I should have known I'd need to help with the wedding, because I knew he didn't have much money. That completely blew my mind. I mean, who in the world budgets their own life around paying for their sibling's wedding? I just looked at him, stunned, and said, "Tyler, that's not a thing. Nobody does that." Right around then, Lauren came back downstairs. She looked pretty uncomfortable, and I'm sure she heard us arguing. She softly said something like, "Hey, maybe you two should cool off a bit," trying to defuse the tension. I was ready to drop it right there, but Tyler was still heated. He turned to her and snapped, "Stay out of it. This is between me and my brother." Lauren backed off quickly and left the room. Then Tyler hit me with the big one. "You know what? If you're not gonna be there for me now, then I don't want you at the wedding at all." He basically kicked me out of the wedding right then and there. I sat there stunned for a second, but then I pulled myself together and told him, "If that's how you feel, then fine. Have your wedding without me." I grabbed my keys and walked out. My hands were shaking as I drove home. I was angry, hurt, and just overwhelmed. Later that night, I got a string of texts from both my mom and dad, basically backing up Tyler and saying the same stuff he did. It was a lot to process. After that blow-up, I needed time to cool down. I haven't responded to them yet. Just needed space to breathe. At this point, it feels like I'm only welcome at the wedding if I write a check. That stings, but I'm not going to give in to emotional manipulation. I'm standing firm, still not paying. I really hope Tyler and my parents eventually calm down and realize how crazy all this is. We'll see. I'll post another update if anything changes. Update 3. Things somehow got even worse. My parents actually brought up the whole wedding issue in front of our extended family. This happened at my cousin's birthday party, which was supposed to be a chill time. I walked in just hoping to relax, eat some cake, and not deal with any of the wedding mess. But clearly, my parents had other plans. They ambushed me with a guilt trip, right there in front of everyone. The party was at my aunt's house. I'd barely gotten through the door when my mom spotted me and practically shouted, "We still need to talk about how you're refusing to help with Tyler's wedding." She made sure she was loud enough for other people to hear. I tried to shut it down calmly. I said, "Mom, not here. We can talk about this later." But she doubled down. Loud enough for everyone nearby to catch it, she said, "Can you believe my name is the only sibling who won't give a dime toward his own brother's wedding? Everyone else is doing their part." I felt my face go red. My hands started to tremble. All the conversations in the room seemed to pause. People turned and stared. My aunt, who was hosting the party, leaned over and gently said, "I'm sure he has his reasons," trying to cool things off. But my mom just brushed her off and kept going. Then my dad joined in, saying, "We're just asking for a little support for a family event. Is that really so much to ask?" It was mortifying. I was standing there being scolded like a child, in front of a room full of aunts, uncles, cousins, and who knows who else. I finally found my voice and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "I'm not contributing because I've got my own debts and financial goals. I don't think it's my responsibility to pay for Tyler's wedding." I was trying to keep it together, but the shame and anger were definitely showing in my voice. Then, in his frustration, my dad yelled, "We only asked him for $3,000. That's it. His sister and brother already agreed to give $200 each. We're putting in a lot too. He makes good money. Why can't he just do this for Tyler?" And just like that, everyone in the room found out what they were asking from me, $3,000. I heard a few gasps around the room. Even my aunt looked surprised. The difference was staggering, $200 from them, and $3,000 from me. As much as I hated that moment, in a weird way, it was almost a relief to have it out in the open. Now everyone could see how unfair this was. I looked my dad in the eye and said, $3,000 is not some tiny favor. I don't have that kind of cash lying around, and I'm not going into debt for this. If you want to fund Tyler's wedding, that's your decision, but don't expect me to cover it. At that point, I was visibly upset. My mom started crying and said, I can't believe how selfish you are. We're family, we're supposed to make sacrifices for one another. She told me I was breaking her heart, and she never thought I'd turn against my own brother. It was dramatic as hell. Then she walked away crying. My dad just shook his head and muttered about how disappointed he was in who I'd become. Then he followed after her. And there I was, left standing in the middle of the room, completely humiliated. But here's the thing, after the dust settled, a few relatives came up quietly and showed their support. My older sister, Claire, came over and squeezed my arm. She whispered, I'm sorry you had to deal with that. For what it's worth, I don't think you're wrong. Even my younger brother pulled me aside later and said he agreed with me. He just didn't want to go head-to-head with our parents right now. Even my aunt, the one who hosted the party, pulled me aside afterward and told me she spoke to my parents. She said what they did was out of line. She made it clear that a wedding is a luxury, not a necessity, and that it wasn't fair to single me out or expect that kind of money from me in front of everyone. I ended up leaving the party early. I was drained, embarrassed, and just needed to get out of there. Later on, I sent my cousin a text to apologize for the drama on her birthday. She was kind about it and said I didn't owe her an apology at all, but I still felt terrible that our family drama had overshadowed her special day. By that point, any lingering doubt I had about standing my ground was completely gone. The way my parents tried to shame me publicly showed just how far they were willing to go to pressure me. So, I sent them both a message. I told them I was really disappointed in how they handled things, and I wouldn't be discussing it any further. I reminded them that my answer was still no, and that trying to guilt me only made me more sure I was doing the right thing. Now that everything was out in the open, I decided I was ready to have one final conversation with them, to put this whole mess to bed once and for all. I needed them to hear it from me, face to face, that this discussion was over and my answer wasn't going to change. Final update. A few days after the family party blew up, I went to my parents' house to talk. I walked into their living room, already feeling the tension. You could have cut the air with a knife. But I was ready. I'd had time to think and I knew what I needed to say. I started calmly, telling them my decision hadn't changed. I was not going to help pay for Tyler's wedding. Not now. Not when the wedding gets closer. Not on the day of. Not at all. I told them I loved my brother and I hoped his wedding turned out great, but I just wasn't able or willing to cover someone else's big event like that. Then I brought up the scene they made at the family party and said flat out that it was totally inappropriate. All it did was make a bad situation worse. The conversation quickly turned emotional. My mom started crying. My dad's face went red with anger. I told them they were the ones putting money above family, not me, because they made such a big deal out of my refusal to hand over cash. Eventually, I got to one of the things I'd been holding in. If you two want to pay for Tyler's fancy wedding, that's your decision. But I'm not going into debt for someone else's party, and that's final. My dad got even angrier when I called it a party. But honestly, that's how I see it. Things started spiraling from there. The conversation went around in circles, back and forth for what felt like forever. They kept trying to guilt-trip me. At one point my dad snapped. Fine. But don't expect us to help you if you ever need anything. And through her tears my mom said, now we know which one of our kids really cares about this family. That stuff hurt. It really did. But I stood firm. I reminded them again and again that my answer wasn't changing, and they needed to accept it. I finally told them, this is the last time I'm going to talk about this. I've made my decision, and I'm not going to revisit it. I hope someday you'll understand, but I'm not budging. When I left their house, I was emotionally wrecked, shaken, sad, and disappointed. But deep down, I was also relieved. I'd finally said what needed to be said. The next day, my sister Claire came by to check on me. We sat and talked for a long time. She apologized for our parents and Tyler's behavior. She gave me a big hug and told me how proud she was that I stood up for myself. Claire said she thinks our parents will cool off eventually, but she's not sure how long that'll take. I told her the whole thing had taken a toll on me. She gets it. She's upset with our parents too, but she's trying to stay neutral to avoid becoming the next target. Still, hearing her say, I'm proud of you, really meant a lot. It reminded me that not everyone in the family thinks I'm in the wrong here. That conversation was about a week ago. Since then, things have gone quiet. My parents haven't called or texted me. Tyler and Lauren aren't speaking to me either. As far as I can tell, I'm basically uninvited from the wedding, even though no one's officially said it out loud. But honestly, I have no plans to attend anyway. Claire's trying to stay neutral publicly, but behind closed doors she tells me she fully supports my decision. And my youngest brother? He actually defended me directly to our parents. He had a pretty heated argument with my dad not long ago, told him straight up that they were being ridiculous. He called me afterward to vent and to check in on me. Knowing he's in my corner and even willing to go toe-to-toe with our dad like that meant a lot. I told him I appreciated it, but I didn't want him catching heat on my behalf. Still, he's had it with them too. So yeah, right now, my parents and Tyler are giving me the silent treatment. And I won't lie, it hurts. I'm not someone who likes conflict. Being at odds with my own family like this has been incredibly hard. But in a weird way, I'm also at peace. I'm no longer stuck in this exhausting back and forth. I've set a boundary and it's firm. Now I'm focusing on myself, my job, my friends, and the relatives who've stayed kind and supportive. I've been putting more energy into paying off my student loans, which is something I wish my parents supported instead of pressuring me to help fund a wedding I didn't ask for. It honestly feels good to have some balance back in my life. I still fully believe I didn't do anything wrong here, and I'm not about to apologize for setting healthy boundaries. At the same time, I really do regret that things have gotten so strained between me and my family. Maybe one day, when everything's calmed down, my parents and Tyler will forgive me. Or at least move past this. I'd like to believe we'll find a way to make peace. I know deep down I didn't do anything bad by saying no, so I'm not going to backtrack or pretend I was in the wrong. But that doesn't mean I want our relationship to fall apart completely either. Right now, I'm not sure how things are going to look when the holidays roll around, especially if we're all still not on speaking terms. But I'll cross that bridge when I get to it. I just want to say thank you to everyone who read my story, offered advice, and sent words of encouragement. When I first posted, I didn't think it would get much attention, but the feedback really helped me hold firm and get through a tough situation. This whole ordeal turned out to be way more intense than I ever expected when I first asked if I was in the wrong. But at the end of the day, I'm confident that standing up for myself was the only real option I had. It's sad that it had to go down like this, but I honestly feel like a huge weight has been lifted now that I'm not caught in the middle of it anymore. For now, I'm just taking life one day at a time and hoping for the best.